Hello.
Hello.
My name is Mika. I'm the CEO of a company called xCURES. Our company does really two things for cancer patients and their doctors. Number one, we help organize information, data, and medical records to make them more portable, easy to use, because they're quite disorganized, right, or hard to interpret otherwise on paper and different systems, et cetera. So we do a consolidation and organization effort. And then we also work as a company to help people identify treatment options. So when the research gets very difficult to do, we use technology to basically synthesize and try to organize for patients what are treatment options, like what are things to consider. Usually there's not a right answer for any of these situations, but we want to at least help people prioritize things as appropriately. And so the objective there is to understand options and learn in real time and learn continuously. And we do this podcast because a part of learning is to share stories and to share experiences and for all of us just to have an opportunity to come together. So the point of that is to say thank you first and foremost for coming here and being with us on the show and sharing. And with that, maybe tell us about you and your journey and share, please.
Where to start? It started a couple of years ago. I was working as an economy consultant at the camp for asylum seekers. And as you can imagine, working with asylum seekers, that's a stressful job because you work with desperate people and desperate people do desperate things. So when I started getting headaches, I just thought that was part of the job. And I went to the pharmacy, got my painkillers and worked through it. But eventually I couldn't take it anymore. So I decided to find myself a better job, something less stressful. And I started to work as a secretary in a Center for Crisis Psychology, which was a tad easier.
I was just going to say that actually doesn't sound that much less stressful.
No, but well, at least I understood everything that was yelled at me. So that was an improvement. No, but it didn't get better. So eventually I quit my job to take care of myself. And that's when it got worse. It was blinding pain, like really had me jumping out of the window almost. And then I started to vomit without actually feeling nauseated or anything. And my balance went off. And then I fell early 2014. I fell in the shower, was rushed to the emergency room, and then I don't remember much. A doctor came to me and said, hey, we looked at your MRI, and I can't remember really having taken one, but apparently they did. I said, yeah, we found something in your brain and you need surgery. And then I passed out. And a couple of days later, I was rolled into surgery. And someone told me to just count down from 100. And I did. I started. And you may say I'm still counting, you know, to this day.
During this process, did you ever think I should go and seek medical care? Because you're describing the headaches, and like, did you go and talk to your doctor about it? And
Oh yeah, they said tension headaches. So they poked onto my shoulders and said, "Yeah, you're very stiff. It's of course you have a headache when you are like that. Go see a chiropractor," which I did. But I mean, you don't want to think that it's something too serious, you know?
Right.
You want to think that, yeah, this is just my muscles, it's just stress. It's nothing dangerous. It's nothing serious. And you convince yourself for a month. And then suddenly it's too late. And you're in hospital. And yeah, they removed the tumor, which was the size of an egg. From behind my right ear. And 2 weeks later, the biopsy showed that it was a glioblastoma. And at that point, the doctor said that they're very sorry, but this type of cancer usually comes back rather quickly, and that they would give me treatment, but it's not to make me all good. It's just to buy time.
And this was 2014, you said?
That was 2014, yeah.
Yeah, that's an amazing story in and of itself with a glioblastoma.
Well, today I'm a peer counselor for the Norwegian Brain Tumor Association. So I get contacted by newly diagnosed patients and caregivers, and I help them get started. I've started how do you call that? A sit-in group for men with cancer, because I got the impression right from the start that men don't really voice their fears and concerns. And that's not good, because the journey with cancer is not a merely physical thing. It's an emotional journey as well. And you have to work with both of that. So I started a group, and we are now 52 guys.
Wow.
In the age of 40 to, I think, almost 70 years old. Yeah.
So you're one of the things I talk to people about, and I think it sounds like you're dealing with this or addressing this directly, is people don't study cancer or know very much about cancer in general unless they work in a field directly related to cancer, meaning in a medical field or some sort of research field in oncology, or if they have cancer, right? These are kind of the two populations of people where it becomes relevant. Yeah. And what that means is, for most people, I think a big majority, at the exact time of diagnosis, they know nothing really about cancer other than cancer is bad, right? That this is a bad thing. And so I would wonder about your opinion about that journey of having to go from this kind of, and even from family members, this like horrible thing that you don't really want to think about. I'm a guy, right? So I try not to think about things that are scary, right? Because it's just, I don't want to think about it, to having to really be an expert and an advocate and to make decisions. How do people go through that? Like, what works, what doesn't, how do you help them do that?
Well, the thing is, you have to isolate what's the really scary thing about it. And the scary thing, especially about, for example, glioblastoma, is I was too scared to actually say the word out loud at the start. I didn't want to know anything about it. I didn't want to say the word. And then after a couple of days, middle of the night, I went online and I wrote glioblastoma into the search engine. And when you do that, you don't get up the success stories, you get up statistics. And you're hit in the face with, hey, you're going to die within the next 2 years. Sorry. That's, I think, the approach that a lot of people do. First you deny that it happens. Then you go online and you get information that is not helpful at all. And you start to grieve because you realize that the life that you thought you would have suddenly is gone. You have no idea what you will have, but you're pretty sure what you thought you would have, that's gone. And what's even worse, you feel you have to stand it alone because no one can understand how you feel. That's where I was in the beginning. And that led me to be very open about my diagnosis and about the feelings that I have. Because I thought, if I can do anything about it, no one should feel alone in this situation. And there has to be something else that people can find when they write glioblastoma into a search engine than only statistics. There have to be success stories as well. And that's what got me onto social media, into glioblastoma groups, brain tumor groups, fatigue, and just trying to put words to all these emotions that come along in this journey. so that other people that walk this road can see, okay, I'm not alone with this. There are other people that feel exactly the same. There's someone else going through the same stuff. There's someone who has the same diagnosis, and that person has already lived 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And statistics are bad, but they're not all that exists.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's driving me.
Well, you're touching on a subject I think about in terms of the patients that we interact with and my own family and others, which is statistics, right? And my background is in biology and finance. So I've spent enough time looking at statistics from an educational perspective. But I always try to remind myself anyway that statistics are about large numbers, right? And are about averages and are about around describing the world very academically, right? Which it's important, right? It gives us a basis often for comparing things. If you want to say something works better in this large group of people than another, we need these methods. But most of the time, statistics don't apply to individuals, right? They don't, and it's really easy to look at the numbers and to say this is me, but it's not you, right? It's a completely different thing. And I think what you're describing there is like, and I'm just speaking openly here, like it almost like you want to associate with the numbers because there's some grounding, which makes you maybe feel not alone, but that it's not a good news either, right? So it's a question of how do you find that your own way, right?
Mika, when I'm speaking with newly diagnosed patients, I make sure that they understand that there's a chance that they might die. Because I think it would be irresponsible to neglect that. But at the same time, I'm telling them that they must understand that they are not part of a statistic. They have to write their own cancer story. And whether you have cancer or not, it's about loving yourself for who you are and celebrating life for all it's worth. And that is universal, I think. And that's the point that I'm trying to push whenever I talk to newly diagnosed patients. And that's what I do with my life.
Mm-hmm. You do wonderful work. I talk to so many people who need that type of resource. Tell me about how you came up with the idea to put this group together and what really led to the formation. Like, how did you end up putting it together? And are there certain philosophies or methods that...
The thing is that when I got sick, I got scared. I was 36 years old and I didn't want to die. Very, very easy. And I just felt like such a loser because I was sitting at home in the middle of the night crying over my keyboard and reading up on glioblastoma. And I thought that I was the purest, the baddest excuse for a man that ever lived, because how could a man not be strong enough to pull through?
God, this is not true. Yeah.
No, of course it's not true, but that's what I felt. And what I wanted was another guy, a man with cancer, telling me it's okay to be afraid. It's okay. It's fine. Everyone is afraid at one point. And I wanted a guy to tell me that. But when I then went onto these support groups, there was hardly a man writing. Only women. Hundreds and thousands of women in these groups, very vocal, very about issues, about problems, about how to deal with it. And very few men. And those that were there, they didn't stand up and say, hey, excuse me, I'm afraid. I don't know how to handle this. It doesn't happen, you know?
Do you think this is a male psyche thing? Because
Yes.
you're right. I just thinking of everybody I talk to, they're predominantly female. And
you know, when you talk to bereaved women who lost their husbands, basically all of them say, my husband was the bravest man ever. He never complained. And at one point I started thinking, okay, he got cancer. He lost his job. He got very sick and couldn't help around the house. He was just lying on the couch and eventually he died. And he had nothing to complain about. How realistic is that? And it hit me that There are, I mean, in Western culture, we're still at the point where you can't cry as a man, because other guys might look at you and say, that's not a manly thing to do. And it's just not true, you know? So I started to read articles about men's health and how men deal with issues and troubles. And among other things, I read articles that say that suicide in men with cancer is up to 4 times as high as in society otherwise, especially in the first year after diagnosis. And that's because of the way men usually handle severe illness. And I wanted to do something. And I thought, okay, maybe if men don't have the need to be tough because there's a woman in the room, they open up a little bit. So I just flaunted the idea that I would make a group for only guys, and only guys that either have or have had cancer. And pop, so 50 members within 2 weeks. And it's a quiet group, but we talk. So.
And do you meet in person? You meet online?
We just started half a year ago. Mm-hmm. So for now it's on Facebook, but I'm looking at other options because I think it's might be time to move it off Facebook and I don't know, something that works a little better.
Do you find in your group that there are those who have an experience like you do in the newly diagnosed? Is this kind of this mix, right, of people who've been through it, like the experience, and there's an emotional support. I assume there's also information exchange, kind of technical support, and just really community that gets built around that.
Yeah.
Was there a right mix there? That
I'd say so, yeah. But it's a quiet group. It's really like a couple of guys in the steam bath, you know. One says something and the other just look and grunt a little bit, and you know, it's okay. Whatever you've said, it's fine. So I would wish that sometimes those guys were a little bit more vocal. But I think for me it was just important that they respect each other and feel safe. And if that's all that they do for the next 2 years, that's fine. I mean, not in a haste.
Yeah. And so as you think about kind of growing and evolving the group, is there a difference apart from just being all men? Is there like a difference? And I hear what you're saying about being in the steam have finished. So I just think of being in the sauna, right? And what conversation you would have. It's usually pretty sparse in its content, but it's meaningful. And so how do you get bigger? Like, how do you touch more lives? And because I understand you're in Norway, right? And this is a Norwegian group, right? And currently, have you thought about bringing it to other communities?
I don't know yet. Maybe. I don't want to do too much because I'm writing a lot. I'm active in different groups on Facebook. And I mean, it's not a job, but sometimes I feel I have to do that. It's important. I mean, what I do is I write short stories. I try to put, write down emotions. And I know that a lot of people struggle with finding the right words, but we're all experiencing the same things. And every time I write something and someone in some group says, hey, that's how I feel it, it helps me, it helps them. Yeah. I love doing that.
You're actually one of the bravest people I've met, Jorg. I want to say that because to come out and I can tell this from the conversation with you, your ability to express yourself emotionally and to be able to kind of let go of this, as you were talking, I was thinking, I'm like, I almost never talk about my emotional content other than very, very privately. I certainly don't share very much with other men, right, around things that I've experienced. Maybe a couple of my closest friends, with my own experiences with cancer in my family and all the rest. And I have to say that being able to come out and to create that, I wish for some points in my life I'd had that support. Certainly, for sure. So, yeah, thank you. I think is I think incredibly important for that group. Well, how would somebody find you in Norway or find your group, so that anyone who's listening, if they hear this and they think, I need this, right? Like, how do they participate?
Well, I'm of course in the glioblastoma support group. That's I think mainly American group for glioblastoma patients and caregivers. We are, I think, about 16,000 members, both patients, caregivers, and bereaved. And I'm publishing a lot of stuff there.
Okay.
And I have a Facebook page where I just publish random writings, small poems, and pictures from my everyday life. And that's Jorg Henneke, or hashtag Fight Like Jorg.
Okay.
Yeah. And well, there is no American group for men with cancer at the moment that I've made, at least. Mm-hmm. But maybe someone is inspired and starts one.
Yeah.
I think groups like that are really needed.
Well, I'm going to fight like Jorg now. Jorg. That's it. I love it. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I love what you're doing. It's a real honor, privilege. Yes. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks, Jorg.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.